afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this WebEx hosted by Insight. This WebEx is on the topic of controlling network access with Cisco's Identity Services Engine. My name is Stephen Love. I'll be your presenter for today. I'm the Security Practice Lead for EMEA. This is one of a number of WebExes I've already held for Insight. Hopefully you've been on one of the other ones I've delivered. So I'd like to thank you all for joining and would like to get started. So I wanted to kind of talk about the issues that are faced by businesses today. There's a number of different challenges that every organization faces, whether that's regulatory compliance or the fact that they need to keep up to date with their with internal systems, making sure that all their devices are up to date, making sure that everything is working as it should be to deliver the services that our user communities need. But this also has a number of impacts on the IT department, the IT team, stretched resources, budget issues, a time to actually be able to do stuff and keep those lights on, keep things going. That combined with some of the regulatory compliance that's out there today, and I think I've talked about this issue on every single webinar that I've done, but I think the reason for that is it's apparent for everybody. It's a really, really important thing to actually consider. So the EU are releasing in 2018 their General Data Protection Regulation. This replaces a number of other European data protection laws that have previously been enforced. This regulation protects any EU citizen data that exists anywhere within a company's or databases or organization. And what this gives us as the user, as the person whose data is being held, is the consent. We've got the right to be able to phone up. For example, my Amazon account online, I can phone up Amazon and ask them to remove any details of my information. So who I am, my contact details, my payment details, etc. And that's a right that I have under the new EU GDPR. Further to this is about disclosure of breaches. So if you take last year, for example, Talk Cashy Madison, these organizations only came to the forefront because they were actually found and was released to the press, or they were discovered by the press or a third party. However, with the EU GDPR, we need to make sure that we alert the data body, the EU data body, to the fact that we've had a breach, what's affected, what of our customers, users will actually be affected by that, and what is basically the outcome. And following this is the penalties and fines that will be applicable, and typically depending on the organisation and what the actual impact of the breach is, will determine then based on the actual the fine levied. So looking back on the TalkTalk example I gave slightly earlier, they would have been bound by some quite sizable fines just based on the fact that on that day one when the actual reports came out. And then further to that, as obviously time has gone on, depending on that impact, and if that impact has actually grown, then those fines levied will be higher. Beyond the EU GDPR, we've got a number of other issues within the market around external and internal threats. And just looking at some of the stats on this screen. So typically, a threat that's actually infected an organization can be on that organization anywhere between 100 to 200 days. If a malware infection has actually entered your network and it's in there for 200 days, whether it's dormant or not, there's a lot of information that can be lost over that time. So, what was that actual infection doing? What devices did it spread to? What systems did it infect? And what data did it exfiltrate? And this kind of thing is something that the whole EU GDPR you'll need to know to be able to address that, to be able to understand what's gone on in your environment. But typically, most organizations are not looking at their internal systems, they're looking at edge security or endpoint security. That combined with the fact that our network environments are becoming a lot more complicated. So 10 years ago, we didn't have so many sort of devices around. Most systems would be wired or potentially wireless systems, but most would be laptops or desktop systems that would access our corporate back-end services. Now today, completely different environment. At any one time, I personally access our corporate data and my email specifically on not just my corporate laptop, but my personal iPad and my personal mobile phone. All of these devices have access to the same data, irrespective of the ownership of that device and also the software running on that device and the user and the ownership. Beyond that, we've got the explosion of the cloud and all the other different types of systems and management and resources that we need to manage on a day-to-day basis. So one answer to this is a new solution that's been developed by Cisco called the Cisco Digital Network Architecture. And this is a combination of a number of different things within the Cisco portfolio. Most notably, two things on that is for the analytics side of things and then also the automation of the network. So most organizations need to be able to do more with less. So they need to be able to faster innovate. They need to be able to reduce the cost and complexity of their systems and lower risk. And this can be done by automating the processes to actually reduce that cost and complexity, and then introduce security and compliance to lower that risk. So if we take a standard network, for example, fundamentally you've got all your devices accessing the network, and those can be a multitude of different systems, so desktops, laptops, mobile devices such as tablets and smartphones. And it's then also what they're accessing. So they're going to be accessing systems internally or also systems externally, so cloud-based applications. And here's a handful of applications that probably most of us are used to using on a regular basis. So Google Docs, Gmail, Box, Dropbox, Salesforce, and those kinds of systems. And which is a good example as well of some of those social applications that we may be accessing. So gone are the days of that client-server relationship that was all bound on site. So obviously the old school mentality of a client-server environment of being able to then sort of ring fence that with a firewall solution to stop things coming in and out of your business, and then put something on the endpoint to protect the endpoint, and there's your security. Today, there's so many different devices, and the control has been lost over those devices. But also, similarly, that the systems that are being accessed have also spread quite considerably. So we've got kind of a scattergun effect at each end of the scale. So that edge firewall is no longer going to be able to protect the perimeter because the perimeter doesn't really exist. And similarly, we can't just push a piece of software down to an endpoint to protect it because some of those endpoints control. So one way of actually addressing this is actually to look at the network as being a sensor to understand what's going on in the environment, because every single piece of traffic that traverses from any one of those devices to any back-end application, whether that's internal or external, needs to traverse our network. And that's either a wired or wireless connection. And what that gives us the ability to do is every single switch and every single access point is then seeing that traffic flow. So if we then start to look at the actual traffic flow itself and then breaking down those traffic flows, we can use a solution from Cisco called StealthWatch. StealthWatch gives us that ability to collate all that information that's being seen on the network and then understand what it's doing. what it means, let it understand it. It can then see if there's any phone style traffic from malware connecting to a site in China, for example, to do some exfiltration. But it sees it as soon as that connection is made, not weeks or months after the event, or when your endpoint system has actually received an update to say, we've now got this new definition file that states that this particular infection will do it looks like this, and it's found. You're seeing it as soon as it starts to communicate out, which is the benefit for you. What you can also then do is then utilize another Cisco product called Cisco Identity Services Engine, which is obviously what this webinar is about. And then the two combined can give you also that contextual information of what's happening on the network, and be able to then make some identify the usage of it's a particular device that's accessing the network and sending data out to a site. It should be in China, and you can very quickly identify that device and be able to then control it. And then using another element from Cisco called TrustSec, we can then start tagging information as it traverses the network. So we can start following it, and we can then start applying policy to it. So network security is then broken down into three areas. So the first area is the assessing of the network data. So we can record everything that's going on the environment. We can know every device that's connected, and we can feed that information into the StealthWatch console. We can then use the profile and posturing entity within Cisco ISE to be able to define what's normal to protect networks. Then make sure that only normal happens and there's nothing else that's abnormal happening on the network. And then enforcing that with the TrustSec. So the three combined can give you a very, very good, robust security solution across your network infrastructure. So just dropping into Cisco ISE for a second. So Cisco ISE is a single policy solution that can traverse many different network types. So you wired networks to your switches, routers, etc. So every point where a wired connection is made to the network, the Cisco ISE can apply policy to that connection. Through to the wireless devices, so exactly the same policy, irrespective of what connectivity be to remote access via Cisco ASA firewall VPN services. So what that gives you is a very consistent policy. So going back to my example of the fact that I carry three devices, two personal, one corporate, I get the same access on my corporate, whether I'm wired or remote from it. So I don't have to be tethered to my desk to be able to gain access to our CRM systems, etc. I have the full access to every system I need to, but I'm also secure in that same guise. Further to that, I can also use my mobile devices and still get the same experience on those mobile devices no matter what connection type I'm using. So take it a little bit further, we can authenticate different devices onto the network using different methods. So for example, if I'm plugging a printer into the network, it's not got user identifiable information, there's other ways that we can actually authenticate that on the network. And also guest users, comes into our organization, they don't have a username password that accesses through our Active Directory and to our corporate resources. So they're able to then be picked up as a guest device and be able to be pushed out to a web portal to be able to either self-register or just log on to the we've been given the sponsor rights to connect to the network. So every single network access point within a network, so that's switches and firewalls and access points, are then communicating with Cisco ISE to be able to deliver that corporate policy out. So you've then got a number of different users and devices that access the network. Depending on what they are and how they're connecting, we can understand who is using the device, if anyone is using the device, what is actually being used on the device, where they're coming from, what time of day it is, and how they're accessing. So there's a few examples here. If Francis is accessing the network remotely at 6 o'clock at night, you can have then a completely different policy applied to him because it's outside of working hours. Similarly, if you're in the office, as Vicky here, during the day on wireless, and that's perfectly reasonable. She's got full access to all of the systems. And then for a security camera that's connected to the network, there's no obviously user, so they will just be then authenticated by the device type by profiling that device, understanding what it is, and then being able to place it into the right network and give it to the right access. And what this means is, depending on who the user is and what device they're using, you can apply a particular policy that is appropriate for them. But then similarly, if they then access that outside of the network and in the evening to do some work, for example, you can then police and apply different policies to that access. So Cisco ISE gives us a number of different features. So we've got secure access, so we can profile devices, we can understand what a device type is. We can also go deeper into that and understand what software version it's running. If it's a corporate device, a corporate laptop, for example, we can understand what if the antivirus version is installed and running, if the virus definition files have been up to date. We can understand a lot about the device and be able to use that to then apply a policy to it. So say, for example, we've got, a user's been on holiday for 2 weeks, they come back into the office, that laptop that they use hasn't been on the network for 2 weeks. There could have been a very important security update done within that time, say from Microsoft or from the AV vendor. When that device joins the network, this actually profile it, understand, right, the user's authenticated and authorized to come onto the network. This is the policy that it's bound by. His devices are actually 2 weeks out. So before we do anything else, we're going to move that device to a separate network that is isolated and can only connect to the corporate AV servers. Allow the device to update, get to its right version of antivirus, and then the Cisco ISE can reprofile it and place it onto the right network to give them the right access. And what that's doing is protecting both the user and also the network from any malicious code that could be on that device. So for example, once the AV is up to date and it actually scans the machine and finds an infection, it can kill it without that being then cross-affecting the rest of the network. So it gives you that sort of confidence that it can protect any access method, and all of that's automated to make things a lot easier for organizations. So you've got a single policy management across the entire infrastructure, and that's included across your wired, wireless, and your VPN services. So that single policy of whatever you want to apply to access, and also time of day access, and also if they've got particular rights over a particular device, that kind of thing. And that gives us a lot of control and a lot of flexibility and functionality built then into the network. So the benefit of working with Cisco is historically they didn't have such a big kind of open API infrastructure framework to allow other organizations to then to tie into that and be able to then utilize what Cisco ISE is doing and then be able to then plug in and share information elsewhere. So there's a few things I just wanted to pick out on this screen. So the first one is around the antivirus sort of vendors. So Symantec and the like of the world have plug into Symantec or Sophos or similar to be able to then make sure they've got the latest definition files on the local machines so they can check that. Also, mobile device management platforms, so likes of MobileIron and AirWatch have a integration with Cisco ISE so that you can then cross share information. So for example, if a jailbroken phone is seen by Mobiline or AirWatch, then that can then be communicated to the Cisco ISE. So Cisco ISE understands that Joe Blogg's iPhone has been jailbroken. If we see the MAC address of that iPhone connecting to the network, we need to block it as soon as it starts to connect. So you've then got that ability to be able to then utilize multiple different feeds of information from different systems to then further augment your corporate security policy on the network. And the other thing I wanted to pick out just very quickly on this screen as well is the SIM solution. So SIM is Solution Event Management. So what it basically does is very similar to the StealthWatch platform from Cisco. It collates all the information from your network. StealthWatch is looking at just flow data, whereas a traditional SIM looks at all log file data. So it will be able to pick out other things from other systems over and above the network. So StealthWatch will be able to plug into that as well. So if you take, for example, a Splunk or a logarithm as an example that will sit above your entire infrastructure and then be able to bring in and collate all of that information. So why would you choose Insight for this? So at Insight, we've got a number of different services that we can actually bring to bear to help you develop and deploy a network security solution. So we start off with our assessment services. So these give us the ability to come in, help guide you through the whole process of understanding what you've got at the moment, understanding what is good, what is ideal for you, and then working out what the difference is between current and future states, and then help you guide you on a roadmap and defining policies and procedures to get you to that stage. We've got a number of prevention services around so things like Cisco ISE, our IPS implementation services, this kind of thing, to be able to allow you to be able to make best use of the information that's coming out of your network and deploy some solutions that can actually help protect and also augment that network security policy. That leads into our detection and mitigation solutions, which again tie in with Cisco ISE. Our recovery solutions give you the ability to be able to understand what's going on in your network, what systems are in use, what licensing is in use, and really look at the kind of health of your environment. Our forensic services are to go in, understand, remediate, and then start planning and deploying new services to be able to then protect you from future types of attacks. And then we've also got our 24/7 support desk, which is based out of our offices in Sheffield, which is multi-language and also covers multiple different solutions and technology stacks. So that's it from me for today. If you've got any further questions, if you'd like to contact your account manager, and then you'd be able to ask them for further information, they'll be able to arrange a call or a meeting with myself. We can go into